Hi everyone. Our next speaker is Dunja Stanivukovic. So Dunja, you can start.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dunja. I will be your presenter for today. I joined Zulke as a delivery lead in January last year. And what that means basically is that I cover everything under the umbrella of project management. My background is actually in finance, but I do have an extensive track record in managing projects that are focused on digital product creation or innovation, explaining probably why I am presenting here today. I look forward to sharing with all of you some of the models and best practices that we use in Zulke to help our clients build high quality digital products. And based on substantial experience in leading different client teams through product discoveries, I will share some of the frameworks and tools that we use to successfully guide these teams to a desired result. We will start with a bit of context setting on basically how us as consultants typically get involved in these product discovery projects, because I do believe it is a bit different compared to coming from a pure product company and how it works there. So topics that we will cover include treating product discoveries as mini projects with clear discovery goals. But we will also talk about agile chartering as a very helpful tool to help us as outsiders quickly grasp product vision, which team setup we're working with, and drive quick alignment within the team on the ways of working. And last but not least, I will share some key tips with you on how to successfully lead these discoveries and some things just to pay attention to if you are working in a project like this. Um, at the very end, we can open up for a short Q&A session and address any questions that you might have or share experiences that you've had on this topic. Let's get started. So what does a typical product discovery project look like for Zulke? Let's first maybe start by clarifying the difference between a product and a project, because I do think that people who are not, let's say, very involved in these topics sometimes tend to confuse the two. And for me, a project is something that is temporary. So it has a clear start and end date, scope, and resources. It is not, let's say, an operation that you would run continuously. It is a specific set of operations designed to achieve a singular goal. On the other hand, product is a living, breathing thing, right? It is a good, a service, a platform, system, whatever it may be, but it is created generally for sale to meet some type of customer or business demand. And usually what happens is that for any product to reach the market, there are a set of initiatives or projects that need to happen to make this happen, right? For a product to go into the market. Product discovery projects, for example, are there to help us decide on the initiatives that we need to take in the future and to help us de-risk these initiatives through research, analysis, testing, etc. So clients typically need Zulke's consultancy either to innovate their products, rebuild their current digital products, or design from scratch their future digital products. And depending on that life cycle, or depending when they reach out to us, we might be running pure discovery phases or projects, or if it's a new product, right? Or we might be leading, let's say, continuous discovery projects where there's already a live product in place. What you need to understand in terms of context is that we usually do not own product strategy. We do work alongside product companies. However, there is usually always a team or a department on the client side that is in charge of product strategy and consists of, let's say, product owners, product managers that have insight into the market and let's say have the knowledge and expertise on the end user needs and requirements. So when they reach out to us, they are not necessarily looking for someone to help them drive a product strategy, but they're looking to us to advise on the best practices, usually in terms of digital, because we have a vast industry experience, a lot of project experience, and we know what is the best in the game, let's say. And they're also often looking for engineering know-how to help them innovate on their product portfolios from a technology perspective, and they're looking to partner with us to help this happen. Typical product discovery project for us lasts anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks. And therefore, Zulke teams, when they come in, they have a very limited amount of time to understand this client environment we're in, what is the product landscape, what is the existing digital technology ecosystem that we're operating in, to be able to make, let's say, sound recommendations to our clients. And you might guess that for this to happen on such short, let's say, time frame, we need to form usually cross-functional teams. What that means is we need to cover usually business, technology perspective, and usually someone from the user side. Typically, that would consist of, let's say, a delivery lead, someone who knows how to drive this discovery process, someone from the business side, usually coming from the client side. So a product owner, a business analyst, maybe some subject matter experts on the topic. And then from a user side, we might have some designers or insiders that have done in-depth customer research. Maybe it could be someone from the client's marketing side. Really, it depends on the setup. And then, of course, from a technical perspective, we would always have a solution architect on the team or a tech lead of sorts. So how do we execute these short product discoveries in practice? Well, the main objective of discovery phase or project is to carry out relevant research to solution the design and do a bit of delivery planning in order to de-risk the product creation or design and estimate with a certain degree of certainty. So what do we do in these discovery projects? I tried to summarize the steps that we usually take in these 4 stages. So first, we would do some type of discovery planning. Then comes research and ideation. Then we would move into a solution design and scope mapping phase. And ultimately, we would conclude discovery with some form of delivery planning. Now, as I mentioned, the objective of discovery is to de-risk. So what are we de-risking? Well, through discovery planning, we are making sure we understand the current problem space and the objective of the business case. So we are making sure we know what is the right thing to build. Why are we here? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? So all of this we're trying to understand in a very limited amount of time by asking the right questions. Through research and ideation phase, we are assessing basically which problem is worth solving. Here, we are understanding the true user needs and the technical landscape that we're operating in. But most of our clients, let's say, are huge corporations. And as you might know, there are a lot of problems in corporations that are, let's say, out there to be solved. And clients might come up to us sometimes asking for us to help them solve one problem, but through this phase, we are trying to identify basically if we are solving the right problem. So it could happen during this discovery phase that client thought we are solving for one thing, but actually there's another underlying problem that we uncover and then potentially switch gears in terms of discovery and try to solve the underlying problem. Once we have identified the problem to solve, we need to make sure we know how to build it right. So what is the best solution to fix this problem? And here we, test out and try various ways to solve the problem. We go through rounds of feedback, and we are trying to design the optimal solution, which addresses key user needs, is technically optimal, and delivers this business value for the client. And here we often validate our assumptions in this stage and make sure we can proceed. Last but not least, we make sure we know how to deliver this solution that we designed. What that might look like is building a delivery plan, making sure we are aware of all the resources we have, of all the constraints there are, dependencies, any governance that might impact us. But also here we have a much clearer view on the team we would need to deliver this, how much it would cost, and how much time we would need to deliver something like this. So here we can basically estimate with a higher degree of certainty and make sure we're also de-risking our delivery if we're continuing with this product. So one thing that I would like to call out here is, given this is a very short timeline you're working on, we need to make sure we're doing all of this research and analysis at the right level. And this is, not an easy task to do, in the sense you need to stay high enough to understand the big picture, the breadth of work, but also detailed enough to understand where the potential risks might lie. And to be able to give some ballpark estimates, you need to dive into a bit of detail. So we need to understand what this balance is, because the aim of discovery is not to come to the client with, detailed work packages or detailed estimations and designs. It is basically a plan to understand how to deliver this in the future and do all of these analyses in detail in the future. Okay, so what I wanted to share with you today is actually, this is all great in theory, but which tools do we use in practice to, let's say, do or understand successfully each of these phases. So for example, during discovery planning, we would usually start with some form of kickoff, usually has a form of a workshop together with the client. So we would probably get everyone, on site or on a call to do a proper discovery kickoff. And a very useful tool that helps us understand the context that we're operating in is agile chartering and discovery timeline planning. I will walk in detail. I will walk you through in detail these two topics because I do believe it is really important. How you kick it off will make sure you're setting yourself up for success. When it comes to research and ideation phase, we are mostly doing interviews here. So whether that's structured interviews or understanding, doing informal catch-ups, it doesn't really matter. But here you're basically interviewing a lot of people on the client side. You're trying to understand who all your stakeholders are. Maybe you're interviewing some subject matter experts, or maybe you are interviewing end customers and performing some type of user research to understand who is the persona that we're solutioning for. We would also be doing some maybe technical spikes in this phase to understand what is a plausible solution in the future. When it comes to solution design, some tools that we use is user journey mapping. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. And this consists usually of us plotting, let's say, this is an as-is user journey, how users are using the tools or operating with the product currently, if it's existing. And then usually some vision user journey. So future, how is the future going to look like? And this often comes with some form of prototyping or wireframing. We do a lot of digital products, right? So this usually comes with some software or embedded software implementation. So we like to keep things visual because it's much easier to align with the clients on what they want if they have a certain vision in front of them. And then when it comes to scope mapping, the tools we use is either epic or story mapping. So that is basically, looks like a big, spider on the board where we're trying to map big buckets of functionality features that would need to be developed, thus forming a backlog for the product development, and usually placing it on some form of roadmap to be able to understand what comes first, what comes second, where are our dependencies, to see it laid out on some form of a timeline or at least sequence. And last but not least, we try very hard to validate some of our ideas for the solution here. So this might look like some form of user testing. Let's say that you had some prototypes or some designs done in this phase. We would ideally like to get some end customer feedback if possible. If not, at least feedback from the client side on whether we're going in the right direction. Ultimately, what we do for delivery planning is a lot. Why? Because this is the summary of everything you've done through discovery, right? This should be, let's say, your final deliverable always from discovery. And here you're doing a lot of estimations, a lot of predictions on what you might need to be able to deliver this product. And for example, when it comes to the team and skills you need, we might use a RASI chart, or when it comes to risk tracking, issue tracking, we might use something like RAID log, where we assess the probability of certain risks happening, mitigations, potential mitigations, and owners of these risks. Then you're also estimating, of course, how big of an effort is this work. So we do this through different estimation techniques, and depending on the project, this will vary. depending on the team, this will vary. But some of our most common ones are, for example, wideband Delphi, where we basically bring together all of these expert opinions and have them estimate in separate sessions and then in joint sessions to make sure we are reaching a consensus on the estimation. Or we would use something like t-shirt sizing or story pointing. Really also depends on what the client is used to and how easy it would be to translate these estimates to them. Ultimately, we use some form of pricing, costing calculators to assess how much this will cost. And from there, we're creating some form of statement of work or a master service agreement in case it's one of our clients we collaborate with often. Okay. So moving over, I wanted to deep dive into a couple of tools at the very beginning of discovery that we use to make sure we are kicking it off well and setting ourselves up for success. So remember, we as outsiders, as consultants, do not have much context from the beginning, especially if it's a new client for us. We don't know about, how the client operates, what is their market landscape, what is the goal with this product that they're trying to build, innovate, or rebuild. They are the experts of this. They probably spent years and years working on their products and their product vision and strategy. So we need to have tools that enable us to quickly understand this product vision and setup we're working on. So, for example, as the first thing of agile chartering, what we're trying to understand is the purpose. So why are we here? What is the product vision? How will we define success? And this is a really important stage because it helps our clients transmit that mission or purpose to the team. And this usually motivates the team when we have a clear direction on what we're doing and really helps build up that motivation. Then we need to get to an alignment with the client on what is our end goal for the discovery. And the way you drive alignment is through establishing certain rules in a way. So here we would talk about what types of skills do we have on the team? What are the roles and responsibilities? Will we handle this from the Zulke side or will we handle this from the client side? What are our team values? What are some of the ground rules? How will we communicate? Which tools will we use to collaborate? What does our meeting structure look like? Basically, we're trying to understand what type of setup will help us reach that goal. And this phase of agile chartering usually brings unity and trust in the team and sets a great expectation on collaboration. And the great thing is that you can really do this in a short amount of time, right? In a matter of a session up front, you can align on these things and really set your collaboration up properly. And last but not least, we want to get a sense of the context or of the environment that we're operating in. We want to be aware of the big picture. So imagine, a huge corporation that invited us to help them migrate, let's say, their product, their backend to the cloud or any type of project that it might be. It's usually a smaller piece of the bigger picture. So we need to understand who are we working with? Who are all the um, who are all the stakeholders that we should be aware of? Are there any external dependencies that might hinder us from achieving this goal? Is there any specific governance that we should be aware of? So, for example, if I need to get a certain thing signed off, what is the process to get that signed off? And then also we need to understand what are the resources that we have for this project. And this goes anything, anywhere from, the skills that we have, both on Zulke side and the client side, but also any equipment, so physical equipment that we might need to deliver this. Um, is there enough funding for us to continue with this initiative? And ultimately, um, are there any future risks that we see ahead? So is there something that will hinder us in the future? The outcome of all of this analysis is, or agreements, is a living, breathing document, usually, with a clear mission, roles and responsibilities, team tools and rules, and the setting that we're operating in. Why I say living, breathing document is because you can actually perform agile chartering as many times as you would like. Of course, it doesn't make sense to perform it every week, but if your team setup changes in a couple of months, or you want to reestablish certain team norms, you might decide to redo the agile chartering actually throughout any phase of the product project in the future. Um, why this tool is very useful is because it helps to minimize team storming phase. And it really aims to align all the parties that are involved on the desired outcome and the ways in which we will work to accomplish the goal that we set out. And it really, from my experience, fosters team bonding. Maybe something to mention here is that if possible, I always try to reserve a full day for such a session. Sometimes, of course, depending on the length of the discovery, you don't have that much time. You don't have the luxury to do it. But if you do, I would suggest, doing this in a full day workshop. You combine it maybe with a social event. It's always better to do it in person if you can. But of course, if that's not an option, there's always ways to make it interactive online as well. Format is also really open. If you're doing it on site, you might be using, boards and sticky notes, things like that. If you're doing it virtually, you might be using a Miro board, um, or doing some online games to break the ice or something like that. But what I would say is definitely it needs someone to facilitate it just because of the timekeeping perspective, someone who will move us along these topics. And then probably a good suggestion for the facilitator is just to have a parking lot for topics that are way too detailed to be discussed in this session, so that we can then park them and follow up on those topics in later phases. Okay, always in the topic of, let's say, discovery planning and how we are starting. Given the short amount of time we usually get to conclude these product discoveries, it is extremely important to align on the desired outcome of the phase and have a plan in place to achieve those deliverables. If you can have this plan in writing, that would be the optimal solution, right? so that everyone is clear on what we set out to do. Because if you have that, then and you work towards that goal, you can assess yourself based on that. We usually do this type of planning session at the very beginning of discovery. So I would say I usually do it as part of the kickoff, right? Where this can be a very short session from an hour to 2 hours. But basically, this is a session where the team lists out the end goals or deliverables for discovery, and then they brainstorm on the required steps to achieve these goals. After that, they plot out these steps on a timeline and basically trying to map any dependencies or sessions that need to happen in the meantime. And ultimately, we define some type of ownership for each step, or at least each deliverable. So here I wanted to show you like a real example of a discovery planning session that I did in a form of collaborative workshop. We used one of these templates in Miro because it was really easy to set dates, to set assignees. We were actually on site, but it was easy to get everyone on this board and collaborate. So if you can see here, our discovery lasted 4 weeks. And then I had a column with the final deliverables at the very end. As a first thing, so each team, and we had multiple, brainstormed for I think 20 minutes or something like that on the final deliverables that they would like to achieve. So here, for example, we had a user and business needs stream where Sarah and John worked. And basically they defined the final deliverables for this work stream. We had others like technical needs, quality needs, testing needs, and I think the last one was like discovery planning tasks or team or whoever is in charge of delivery and what needs to happen there. So once we've completed the final deliverables column, um, all teams individually had a session to brainstorm on the required steps to achieve these deliverables, and they plotted them out throughout these 4 weeks. So what needs to happen? So if you can see here in the first week, we had a lot of, as I mentioned, research and ideation phase. So we had a lot of interviews, requirement analysis, diving into the materials that were available. Then in week 2, we had some SME sessions on specific parts of the tool that we needed to understand better. And then week 3, we already started, let's say, with some of the discovery deliverables, like building an initial roadmap, high-level story mapping, things like that. And then for week 4, we planned out a review and sign-off steps. You can see also that there were dates assigned for certain things. Those were, for example, sessions where we had meetings scheduled. So the client, for example, supported in scheduling these sessions with their subject matter experts. And then here also you can see that there were people assigned to certain things. So we really also try to define who owns these steps and tasks in order to deliver this. Okay. So last but not least, I wanted to summarize some of the key tips, which I mentioned throughout this presentation, but here I really wanted to place them on a single page, and it really consists of these asking ourselves these 5 questions. So first of all, what is the context? Here, making sure we are focusing on the big picture goal, avoiding to get stuck in the details. This is basically getting a good understanding of the client environment, of which resources we have, what are our limitations, where are the dependencies, etc. And then as a second thing, making sure we understand the product vision, mission, how will we measure success at the end of discovery, and basically making sure that we're all aligned on the end result of discovery. As I mentioned, if you can put the end result in writing, that would be optimal, so that then we're really working all together as a team on a defined goal. You need to ask yourselves if you have the right people involved. So we need to be sure we're assembling the right team. These are complex projects, and we need experts to help us make the best decisions here. But also, it also goes for the client side, whether they provided us access to the right people. Sometimes you will find that your discovery team setups are not optimal. Sometimes you will be able to react fast. Other times you will need to work with what you've got. But it is important to escalate these concerns immediately. You might also receive pushback from the client side or unwillingness to collaborate, let's say, especially if the initiative is pushed top down. If you know certain people that are doing day-to-day operations are not willing to cooperate. This, of course, on such a short time frame, will hinder you from achieving your goals. So it is important to escalate these things early and get the right people involved. You do this probably also through stakeholder mapping. This is actually another tool to use when starting out on a project. You need to make sure you know which stakeholders have the biggest, let's say, buy-in at the client side. So those people who will influence your work. There will be some people who will only, like to stay informed about your work, but then others will definitely be in charge of making decisions on the next steps for your work. So it is important to understand who those people are and start building the relationships with those people. As I mentioned, agile charting helps with a lot of these questions, but make sure you're picking the appropriate format for your kickoff. It really helps save time and just quickly align on the ways of working, and basically streamlines communication with the other team. And last but not least, as I mentioned, just have a sound discovery in place. Think ahead, make these meetings happen, and ultimately summarize findings. That's maybe a last point to mention. Is at the end of the discovery, make sure you're presenting all of your findings to the client teams, and sharing any insights that you found through this research and analysis. That would conclude my presentation for today. But I would like to open it up, see if anyone has any questions maybe, or has some experience to share on this topic.
Thank you very much, Dunja. It was very interesting. And I would like to ask others to join conversation, or if you're shy, you can just put comment here in the chat.
Maybe one question from my side. First of all, thank you very much for this presentation. I enjoyed.
Sorry, we cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me. Is it better now?
Yeah. Now it's better.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Dunja, for this presentation. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I would like to ask you one question. It sounds very easy in the way how you explained the whole discovery process of 4 to 6 weeks. But from your perspective, some tips and tricks, maybe a few of them, for orchestrating the whole process and in the way to get the result in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the question. I would say probably organizing the kickoff well or preparing for it, right? So that you get all the alignments that you need. That's why I mentioned the role of a facilitator, someone who can help you get to the end goal of that session. Also having this planning session is very critical. And then executing on those meetings, right, that are supposed to happen. Because once you have that view on the plan, and you schedule those meetings, it's about making sure these happen and that you're summarizing the findings from that. It's also about leading, of course, the team. There's many moving parts in discovery, so a discovery lead is a critical role in this project, that is able to collect all the insights, let's say from the tech analysis, from the user and business need analysis, and also the delivery planning steps that need to happen. But it's by no means an easy task, especially in complex client setups. It is a very difficult project to manage, basically because of this short timeline.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I can also jump in. Thank you, Dunja, for the great presentation, not because we are working in the same company, but it's really my objective view. I would fully agree with all that you presented, and I would a little bit disagree with Jelica that it sounds easy. It's not sound easy. I mean, it's also a kind of big structure of it. But I just also want to share that in some previous experience, I challenge the way how the client approached this, because usually it's also time pressure to start delivering. Sometimes it happens that client is struggling also with the budget, but mostly with the timeline, and they're expecting to start delivering as soon as possible. Avoiding also this kind of discovery phase, which I really find crucial in order to provide the proper planning and all the details, especially for the roadmap. So I will underline the key learning that we should insist and set up the proper expectation at the early beginning, because also during the project, it can convert into the continuous discovery. So it's not done once at the beginning of the project. It should be a kind of constant way of working and collaborating with the client.
Absolutely. And that's probably the reason why, some products fail and some succeed, probably for teams that have a proper, setup to do this properly and plan it out, have a better chance at succeeding.
Yeah. Thank you once again.
Thank you.